Hello, Whitefish. Well, fall is in full effect. The summer smoke is gone, leaves have changed from green to gold, and most of all, it means slightly less confused tourists wandering into the streets of downtown Whitefish. But with the changing of the seasons, come more wild animals into our yards, from deer to bear to that flock of wild turkeys on Baker Avenue, leaving little turkey turds in front of our office. Oh gosh, there's too much turkey shit everywhere. But much like the confused tourists who aimlessly wander into the streets, be sure to keep an eye out for them. We don't want anyone or anything getting hurt. Today's guest is Scot Chisholm. You may know him as a co-founder of Haskill Creek Farms, locally known for their high-quality natural pharmacy and renowned cannabis counter. He and his team also run a certified organic hemp farm and the nonprofit Save Farmland, which works to preserve farmland for the next generation. Today's episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. If you would like to help support the fight against human trafficking, visit thriverscoffee.com to order your coffee and make a difference today. Scot, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, most people know you or would know you from Haskill Creek Farms, which has kind of been like the new amazing spot that people love to go to. I know like a lot of people don't really know the backstory, but they love it. Like I remember when it first opened, going and seeing all the food trucks and being like, this spot is dope.
Yeah.
But not knowing anything about like the man behind it.
Yeah.
So tell us about Haskill Creek Farm and why you decided to start it.
Sure. Well, it was funny because we were building it out over like, I don't know, what was it, 2 years?
Yeah.
It was through COVID. And so building was a little tough and expensive. And I think everyone in the neighborhood and the community is like, what the hell is that? What is going on there? There's like dumpsters. There's all this construction going on. And then there was sort of a rumor in town. I think that's a dispensary, and then that just adds more mystery to the whole thing, right? But I'll back up. We started Haskill Creek, honestly, as, we started the cannabis counter concept actually originally, which is the dispensary, because my buddy Craig, who I went to high school with, had been here for probably 15 years-ish or so and was going to start a dispensary business. And at first I was like, I'll invest in you. That'll be fun. Like it's going to be rec legal, hopefully. So that was sort of the idea, was around that time. And then I started to talk to him about more of like a holistic concept where you had a dispensary and cannabis counter, but you also had this, sort of alternative health concept to pair with it, almost like sister companies. And that was kind of the very initial seedling of the idea. And it took many years to actually bring it to fruition on Vorman Road. But we had to look for a spot. We had to find out where to put this concept because it had the cannabis component to it. So you couldn't have it in the city limits at the time. So we found a property right on the outskirts of town in Vorman where we were able to basically cultivate the cannabis right on site, but also look at the house when we were buying it and said, we kind of thought to ourselves, like, could this be an actual store? And the previous owner had an addition to the house that was almost like separate, and that ended up being the store. And everyone thinks we tore down the structure and it's a brand new structure, but it was a home, it was a residence. And we were very grateful to be introduced to the family and for them to be excited about the concept because we let them know exactly what we were doing. And we hopefully did right by the property. But it was that expansion to the house that became the retail store. And then we turned the rest of the house into a residence that Craig actually ended up living in still does for the first couple of years, just to like oversee the property.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Huh. So that's kind of how it started. And I was going through my own health issues as a founder of Classy, my previous company. I'd been doing it for 10-15 years, and I was basically breaking in half from stress and just the time, the toll it takes on you. And I had gone down my own sort of personal health journey with different doctors, more like traditional doctors, trying to figure out what was going on. I was having trouble swallowing. I had migraines all the time. I had like crazy sinus pressure all the time, these weird things. I was getting scans on my throat, actually down in Kalispell for like tumors. So it was at that point, like we didn't really know what was going on. And so I started seeing some more naturopathic doctors and got on a totally different regimen, kind of looked at my whole life in general, from my sleep to what I was putting in my body. And then I kind of eliminated some of the negative stuff and started treating myself a little bit better. And most of the symptoms went away in like 2 months. which was
Whoa.
crazy. Yeah.
Huh.
So, and this all happened a couple of years ago. And so as we were starting to, so I was talking to Craig more about this concept, I was having this experience. And so I was like, man, like a store like that you could go to that offers herbal supplements and sort of the alternative path to a Walgreens or going directly to the hospital, it doesn't really exist. I mean, you can get all these brands online randomly, but it's a nightmare to try to sift through what's really quality. Mm-hmm. And I had to go through doctors just to even get on the right path at all. And so we sort of took the initial seedling, which was, wouldn't it be cool to have a holistic health concept, one part, sister company, cannabis, one part, holistic health. And we sort of infused my own personal experience into it and said, like, well, what if naturopathic doctors could recommend to their patients to come here to fulfill the stuff I was looking for, the supplements and other. And so we kind of then evolved it even further and dialed in the concept. And it took about, I'd say almost 8 months where I think it clicked in people's heads. They'd go to Vorman and they're like, oh, I get what they're trying to do here. You know what I mean? Before it was just like some weird dispensary concept, and I don't even think they realized that it was actually two businesses, like kind of sister companies. And then we had the events, which was great, but it took a little while for us to dial in the product mix. So they're like, I get it. Like, this is an alternative to Walgreens, because it has a healthy alternative to Walgreens. I get what they're doing. And then sales started slowly clicking up. And now, in general, it started as, sales between the two companies. It was 99% cannabis, 1% everything else. in the beginning. Yeah. Now it's 50-50.
Whoa.
And people go all the way out to Vorman and they'll spend a couple $100 because they'll do their health shopping there because it's that much of a nightmare to do that online, and you can't really get all that stuff anywhere around here.
Right. I get my razor blades from you guys.
Oh, perfect.
Heavy
leaf.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
I
cool.
love those things too, because like there's so much waste in razor blades. There's so much waste in everything, but I love just like you can just take out the little metal blades and toss them, and it's just so low waste, and the blade's heavy, and it feels great to shave with.
Yeah, and I should give my wife Carrie a lot of props, and Colette, who is sort of our GM of the stores.
Colette's great.
Once Craig and I, our dumbasses, got out of the way, they took over, and she's a professional designer. She designed the experience of the store. Carrie did, and we sort of collaborate on the outside area, so it feels like almost it has winery vibes. We say it's a destination. You go there. There's events. There's food trucks. There's whatever, and it feels like home. And that was kind of what we wanted it to feel like. And she just knocked it out of the park with the design. And then Colette and Carrie have really collaborated on taking our product mix to the next level. And part of the initial phase for 6 months probably was, I did the buying. So once I got out of the way, they started doing the buying. It dialed in the product mix, and then people were like, "Oh, I get this. What this concept is." Yeah. So they've done a phenomenal job, from like Leaf to bringing in, Symbiotica is a great supplement company out of San Diego. We're bringing in Momentous this month, which is like a premium protein company. So we're trying to find like the top of the line products, but also brands that sort of share our values as well. And that's been, it takes more time to do that, but I think over, you start to do that slowly over time, and people notice, and they say, hey, like, your values are my values. I want to shop here. You know what I mean? Not only is this top quality, but these guys give a shit about the environment. They give a shit about X, Y, and Z, right? And so that's started to really catch on, I think.
That's great. Going in there kind of reminds me of growing up. I used to go with my parents to Third Street Market. That was where you could get all your supplements and stuff. Yep. Now they're more of a grocery store with like a niche supplement market.
Yep.
And it feels like you guys have really just expanded on that, because there is such a historic market for people that are into that want something alternative, don't want, like you said, just the Walgreens brands that are just like everywhere. And it's great quality. And another thing is like the quality of your cannabis is also pretty renowned locally as well. So is there something specific you guys do to really make sure you're doing high quality cannabis? What's your methodology or philosophy there?
Well, all the credit goes to Craig. So he's, he does more than just grow, but he's our master grower. And I think, if I were to sum it up in a philosophy, if you will, cannabis has been around for thousands of years. We rewound the clock and tried to do it the original way, without chemicals, letting nature lead us. For example, we use what we call living soil in the beds. So the way most cannabis is grown is they put soil in, they put the plants, the seedlings in, and they just torch it with chemicals. The output looks pretty, but actually doesn't have the profile of one that's done in organic soil. Then you trash the soil. You have to get rid of it and fill it with new soil. When you grow in living soil, you basically mimic the environment, real soil that's out in nature. And so you don't throw away the soil from time to time, and you don't use chemicals. You replant right in the same bed. So not only do you save the soil, but it's basically there's a living ecosystem in there with bugs and everything. I mean, we have things flying around in the grow. And that's what he's created. It's almost this like mad scientist approach that mimics nature. I mean, it is nature.
Yeah.
And that gives the fullest profile, which isn't just high THC, which is sort of, I totally get that. Like certain levels of THC are, desired by a certain subsect, but there's a whole market out there that wants actually just a little bit more of an attainable, digestible amount of THC, maybe a couple of milligrams, or in the flower, maybe just lower than 30%, right? And they're also looking for a rich terpene profile, which basically means the other sort of characteristics of the experience that you get. And so we've really focused on that through the Living Soil program. And our flower is kind of renowned for that. And we also took the steps to become Clean Green certified, which is basically the organic certification of cannabis, because you can't get a USDA organic seal because it's still federally illegal. And so we went through this program early on, and just to sort of put our money where our mouth is, to practice what we preach. We're talking about how great this is. Like, well, someone should vet us. It's one thing to call something organic. It's another thing for someone else to come in and audit you. And so we did that as well. And we've taken a ton of steps with even the packaging to make that sustainable and recyclable and all these things, and try to even treat exit bags differently and have them be recycled and reused. And so I think it was just more coming in from day one with a different philosophy on it. Let's not overcomplicate this. Let's go back to the roots of the plant.
No pun intended.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. And then let's elevate the experience of the product, which is from the packaging to the way that the bag that it's put in, to the way we call them herb tenders, to the way the herb tenders talk to you and educate you. And I think we still have a long ways to go. It's always a work in progress, but I feel like people have noticed.
Yeah, people definitely have. Like, that's definitely one of the top dispensaries that gets thrown around as having the best product. So the soil, do you encourage mycelium growth? Is that sort of one of the fastest in making that more rich soil that creates those nutrients naturally?
Yeah, I mean, Craig's the scientist, so I don't want to speak out of turn here,
sure.
But I believe so. Yes, I mean, it's basically similar to we basically grow hemp on a different property as well for CBD, cool. And we have a whole composting program. We have alpacas that actually contribute to that composting program. They have the best poop, by the way, for crops. It's non-hot and you can scoop it right in, but we actually do a whole composting program. Then we use that for the soil. And so we're creating that ecosystem, that living soil, not only in the hemp field, but we're basically mimicking the same process at the cannabis beds. And that's how we started. We actually used a lot of the soil from Edgewood, from where I live, from
cool.
the hemp farm, to start this program.
So what's interesting is when you were building Haskill Creek Farms, I think the first thing that people noticed was the Save Farmland sign. And that really, I remember people were like, "Ooh, that's awesome, whatever it is. We have no idea what that is." So can you explain what is Save Farmland?
Yeah, totally. So, kind of my background is in nonprofits, nonprofit technology. And I'm a big believer that even if you're running a for-profit company, you can always look for ways to give back and to partner and collaborate with causes. Doesn't mean you need to be an activist in everything you do from a business perspective, but I do think you should give a shit and give a damn, especially to the community that you're operating. The community is the platform. They're allowing you, essentially, in my mind, you have to earn their right, their trust. That's how I just look at business in general. So when we were starting this, we're like, well, what are we doing for the community outside of just plopping a shop on Vorman, And so Craig had lived here for a while. I'm about 3.5 years in, but this was very in the beginning. So, well, what do people care about here? So we started asking just random people in town and our friends, what are the causes that keep you up at night, that you just have a reaction to? And 9 out of 10 responses were the loss of open land, development, and it was just this Montana not being Montana, Whitefish not becoming something different, right? And I think that's a very charged issue, right? There's a lot of angles on that,
right?
And Safe Pharma is certainly not anti-development, but we felt like there was a need for someone to sort of look at the landscape around town and see, could we protect some key parcels of land sort of proactively, so that you fast forward the clock 50 years and the town might grow around these parcels, but then you have protected agricultural land. And then the second half of the idea was, well, land is so prohibitive, it's so expensive for young farmers to even get into farming. Yet, ironically, there's a spike in interest in farming across the nation, but people flame out after like 2 years because like this is just too fucking tough. It's too expensive. Like I'm not going to make any money, and we can go on all day about that. The incentives for farmers are totally whacked. But either way, like how could we make it easy? How could we reduce the friction for someone that shows an interest in farming but it's not accessible enough for them, and keep them in the valley? Because that's another thing that happens. They just end up going hundreds of miles away because it's cheaper, or they leave Montana entirely, even though they went to the community college for agriculture or whatever it is. And so the second half of the Safe Farmland idea was not just to protect the parcels, but to create programs for young farmers to incubate on the land virtually free with shared equipment so they can get their sea legs under them and start to really monetize and then graduate to another parcel of land that we might own or someone else might lease to them, but we would broker it, almost like a career counselor in high school.
Amazing.
And so that's kind of the idea. It's just twofold. And I think the other thing I realized later was there's a lot of conservation organizations out there, and that's great. A lot of them look at purchasing land from either a environmental perspective is like very popular, obviously, and that's great with land, easements and all that stuff, environmental easements. But we decided from day one that we wanted to look at through like a food system lens, which really just means, okay, the community's growing. There's more demand for organic food than there actually is growers. And young farmers can't afford to, they can't even afford land here. They can't start here. So that's kind of messed up because it's like people are asking for more organic local food, yet there isn't enough supply. And you have a lot of phenomenal community farmers. We're lucky to have people like Two Bear and Wicked Good Produce and others in our community who have really started movement, Purple Frog, right? Like there's just a whole like sort of group there. But as Todd from Two Bear would say, he's not going to do this forever. Yeah. But who is replacing them? And there's a real void there. And so that I think is almost creating like the feeder system, the farm system, for this area. And then long term, if the model works here, we would basically open source it to other communities. And that's kind of the key thing. But
that's great.
Yeah. So that's the idea, and the momentum has been honestly so big, like more than we can even like. We're trying to keep up with the amount of people that are interested in the concept.
Wow.
It's like it's like. I mean, we're barely an organization, and we were a slogan on a T-shirt at first. I mean, like, we were just trying to talk about the issue, but now it's a 501c3. Cool. We have a board. We're trying to figure out how to get funding for like an actual executive director, but we do have kind of a cool budding fundraising program we're working on where different local businesses are donating 1% of their sales to Safe Farmland through the 1% for the Planet program, which we're now an approved charity. So that's actually bringing in some income as well. And we've done some local events, but we're really trying to get to like a sustainable level, like a sustainable budget. And then we're going to really hit go, and we'll start fundraising for the actual facilities and the sort of infrastructure for the incubator farm, hopefully next year.
Do you have a site for the incubator farm, or?
Right across from Haskill Creek. So,
cool.
So that was going to be developed next to Creekwood.
Yep.
And ironically, this big tree in the middle that is the perch for some family of bald eagles basically scared off several developers who were at the finish line to buy that land. And there was another group that was coming in right when we were basically doing Haskill or building on Haskill, and supposedly they were gonna push it through. And we were like, man, wouldn't it suck to do this whole thing right here, like with Haskill? And part of the appeal was the view of the mountains from Big Mountain right there and everything. Wouldn't it suck to have a development right across the street? So we were like, okay, this is like sort of in the infancy of Safe Farmland. We weren't even connecting the two dots. So my wife Carrie and I went and swooped in and bought that property before Safe Farmland existed as an organization.
Oh, okay.
Then we later donated it to Safe Farmland when it existed as an organization, and that will be the initial spot for the incubator farm.
Fantastic. Yeah. And does that butt up against Johnny's property?
It doesn't. It's actually closer to it's closer to Muldown.
Muldown,
yeah,
okay.
So it's sort of like
okay.
Yeah, it's right,
yep.
Like, kind of buds up against that dead end in Muldown.
Yep.
And it's next to the Barnes farm. Johnny's a little bit further down.
Gotcha. Isn't there like a creek that runs through there?
Yeah. Cow Creek, I think.
Cow
right?
Creek, yep. That's a cool spot. Well, that's fantastic, because that's one thing the community, growing up here, has always been such an open community. People are always sharing their homes, their businesses. And one of the things that I'm sure you've learned is the fear of people coming in, buying land and closing it off, fencing it off, whether it be huge, hundreds of thousands of acres around Montana. But that's what's cool, is like you have bought your spot and you've opened it up as a place where the community can come. And that's one thing like our community needs a lot of, especially because I've got a kid. A lot of people want to go somewhere where there's family stuff, where you can listen to music. You have good food trucks. You got your Spotted Bear bar there, which is like cherry on top. Shout out Lauren. But so congratulations on that, man. That's really rad that you've done that.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked on that. So how did you even end up in Whitefish?
So we had several ties to the community, one being Craig. He was at, so he's done a lot of things, growing, all sorts of stuff, but he was at Craggy for a very long time. He was like the lead bartender. You'd been long
I know
hair.
Craig, of course.
Always a scowl on his face, but he's the nicest guy in the world.
Totally.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I know. I'm putting it together now.
We both look very serious and we're not, him especially.
Oh,
He'll laugh when he sees this.
Yeah.
No, he's a great guy and super smart. So Craig, we went to high school together. And way back in a town outside of Boston called Hingham, Massachusetts. And so that was one tie. And then my former company, Classy, still my company, or our company, not my company, but I'm still involved. My co-founder, Todd Crutchfield. Todd McViney's Craig's brother.
Yeah.
Todd Crutchfield moved to Big Fork, and so I had the connection there. And then we just had other friends that lived here, and so we visited, and eventually that led to looking, and then we luckily found this property on Edgewood pretty much pre-COVID, like the very beginning of COVID. The craziness in prices had not yet spread outside the lake.
Oh,
so
man.
And this property had been sitting for a year and a half. And you wouldn't even, our realtor, God bless him, I love him, Lindsay, he's like, I'm not sure you want to see that property. Like, no one's there. It had a thing, it had a stink to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's just look at it. Like, and we went and we looked, and I was like blown away. I was like, why is this sitting? I don't understand. I mean, views of Great Northern and all that stuff. And and it was a farm. And so we ended up buying it. And we were initially thinking that it would be the spot for the hemp program, maybe more. And then my wife and I decided to just move in and just live here full time. COVID got accelerated a little bit. Our kids were struggling with the virtual learning thing. And, we felt like this was a better environment for them. And so really it was sort of a COVID catalyst kid decision, but the property was sort of the magic piece where I'm not sure if we had found that, I'm not sure we would have moved as quickly, at least. So
wow. And where were you guys before that?
We were in San Diego.
Oh, in San Diego.
Yeah, I grew up outside of Boston, and then I moved right after college to San Diego. Thought it was going to be like 6 months of hanging out with my buddies and surfing, and that turned into 15 years, a company and a family.
Yeah.
and we knew we might want to move out, and it was just a decision of where, and it was maybe back to the East Coast or wherever, and we ended up moving here.
Yeah, all it takes is that one visit, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So funny how for years, like I grew up in Whitefish and then went to LA, and this was like early aughts, and I was in the Bay Area before that, and people just were like, Montana, where's that again? It was just still this kind of like spot that like maybe you'd heard of Yellowstone and Glacier Park, but it just was never on anyone's radar to want to go there.
Right.
And now in the last few years, it's just one of the spots.
It is. And I feel like, in a way I'm part of the problem. And so I think of like, how can I be part of the solution as well? And I kind of actually give back. I mean, the way I look at it is like, we're all on borrowed time, borrowed land, and everyone that is here likely moved here from somewhere at some point. So I'm newish, but I think anyone that's been here would appreciate someone new coming in and looking at it through the lens of like, how can I help improve the community? How can I give back to the community? Not bring, my experiences from somewhere else and try to impose them here, but to understand the community, to actually meet people, to like get out there and like what we did with Save Farmland. Like, I didn't come in before moving here and say, I'm going to start a nonprofit called Save Farmland over at Whitefish. It was just talking to people.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, there's a need. Like,
yep.
I think I have the experience and the skills to maybe fill that need. And I think it's simple, but I think people come in with a certain preconceived set of notions, and I think if they just listened a little bit more in the beginning and really strive to understand the community and the history of the place that they're inheriting essentially in a way,
exactly,
they can be better stewards of it.
You bring up such a good point. Like, people are like, Morgan, you grew up here. What do you think about all these Californians moving here? And I'm like, dude, I'm from California. I was born in Laguna Beach. And they're like, oh. But I'm reading this amazing book I highly recommend called Tribes by Sebastian Junger.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, he directed Restrepo. He's like this amazing war journalist. And he kind of breaks down like the history of a successful tribe knows when to bring in outsiders that can make the tribe stronger, that know how to tend the land in new ways to really grow the community and grow the tribe. And that's like what makes a healthy tribe, a healthy community, is not being completely closed off. And sure, people are jaded over certain areas. And there are people that move here. They get their big house up on the mountain, and then they get their Whitefish portfolio of 15, 20, 25 investment properties that they just do short-term rentals. And those are the people that create this animosity. But, people like you come in and want to be part of the community. Yeah, awesome. Mm-hmm. I have to bleep that out because it's on YouTube. But no, but you're totally on point. And that's what we need in this community right now. Like, I interviewed Daniel Sitter, who's on the executive director for Housing Whitefish, moved here a year ago, already making a great impact in the affordable housing narrative that
I watched that one.
Them. Yeah,
it's really good.
He's really interesting.
I learned quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. So people like you,
Well, I think when you have kids too, and you move here full time, the way I look at it is, will my kids be proud of our contribution in the way we sort of landed here and we invested in the community? Will they look back and be proud of that? And will it be a place that they want to stay and contribute to over time? And if we treat it like crap, they might treat it like crap. But if we come in here and we're like, hey, this is our home, and we want to treat it like, with some sense of ownership and pride, and not only the stuff we own, but with respect to the folks that have been here for much longer than us. And I think hopefully they take that with them. But I think having your kids there in this, in the school system and just showing up every day, that alone, that just forces us to think about it a little differently. So I'm glad we decided to just fully move and not sort of have this be a second home or whatever, which we probably wouldn't have done anyways. But I'm just glad we took the leap and we just said like, hey, this is our new home. Like let's treat it like one.
Oh, that's so great. So what is Classy? And it's funny because, we're here in Deliver Fund's headquarters and we actually just started using Classy. Yeah. So it's pretty fun. So can you explain what is Classy?
Yeah. You think that would have been set up. It was like too perfect, right? Yeah. Classy is a fundraising platform for nonprofit organizations. And it helps them raise money online, manage their donors, and overall just grow their organization. It's sort of like Shopify meets Salesforce for nonprofits in a way. And
cool.
We started it a long time ago, and it was really just a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society initially. It wasn't a software company or anything like that, because my mom had cancer growing up, and chemo, radiation, the whole bit for 4 or 5 years. She survived, but everyone that I was living with at San Diego at the time had also been through a similar experience with their parents. So it was kind of near and dear to our hearts. And our genius idea was to host a pub crawl. That was our fundraiser, and collect cash at the door. And we were trying to figure out what to name this pub crawl. And the movie Anchorman with Will Ferrell happened to be on in our apartment, and he says, "You stay classy, San Diego."
Yeah.
So my buddy Pete goes, "Well, why don't we name the pub crawl the Stay Classy Pub Crawl?" And we're like, "Okay, cool." So we named this pub crawl, after Will Ferrell.
I love that. That's one of my favorite movies.
And that evolves into more fundraising events in San Diego to just get young people involved in the cancer cause, but also in different local causes around town. And eventually we started doing athletic events, and we started doing concerts. And our biggest one was 5,000 person music festival with Modest Yahoo and Cage the Elephant and Del the Funky Home Sapien. This is how this grew.
What, you had Del there?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, we were actually, and we partnered with the Padres, the baseball team there. We were one of the first to ever put a concert on there, and we put Del there, and he's dropping F-bombs left and right, and the head of the Padres comes out. He's like, "Who did you put on my stage?" And I'm like, "Sorry, we're raising money for charity.
Yeah.
Leave me alone."
Listen to the other words. He's great.
Yeah. So ironically, now I know Johnny Shockey pretty well from Under the Big Sky, and his production crew were the same people in San Diego that actually did our charity events back in the day.
Oh, no way.
Which is crazy. Yeah, so total full circle story there. And I didn't know Johnny, though. Right. But anyways.
Now he's your neighbor, kind of.
Exactly. So but that we started working with nonprofits more closely through that, and we started to run into issues with the software we're using to collect tickets to the events and allow people to donate. And so we asked the nonprofits, like, "Hey, can we use what you're using? Like, what do you use for your fundraising?" And there was this company called Blackbot, is really old school, and we were like, "You're using that for your outreach and your fundraising? Like, and so we kind of thought to ourselves, I think we could do better. Essentially, that was literally the seed of it. And so we went out and hired a programmer, literally from Craigslist, and built an app that would allow someone to buy a ticket to our events and then to create a personal fundraising page, which was essentially an early version of crowdfunding specifically for charities. And this was back then. So, GoFundMe was starting then, Kickstarter, Indiegogo.
What year was this?
It was 2000. It was probably around 2010.
Okay, cool.
But we were like the white labeled version of that for charities. So people didn't really know who we were. You know what I mean? For a long time, we were decently well known in the nonprofit space, of course, but still not very well known outside of that, which is fine with us. But essentially, similar as like a white labeled charity version of a crowdfunding site, and then we eventually built more tools and whatever. But now that platform raises billions a year across almost, I think, 10,000 nonprofit organizations, from the smallest of small and a lot of nonprofits in Flathead, all the way up to like Salvation Army and those size nonprofits use the platform to fundraise.
Wow!
All from that Will Ferrell pub crawl. Who would have thought, right? But the name actually is from that movie, which is hilarious. We ended up dropping the stay from the name, and then rebranding it to Classy. And we were gonna rebrand to like Impact This. I'm so glad we stayed with Classy.
Yeah,
so I could tell the story 10 years later.
It's so much better. That brings a good point, because I'm fascinated by branding, and good branding, I feel like, comes from stories like that, where it's just like a random word where you're like, what does that mean? But that's just such a great story, because things like impact or innovation or all these things just kind of get overused so much, and they just get into our vernacular, and it just kind of, they end up lose meaning. But now you have like these great brands, like I was having the questions like Montucky Cold Snacks to Liquid Death.
Yeah, right. Genius.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then you see like their social media campaigns and everything. It's just so good. I feel like there's so much more whimsicality and fun that can be had in marketing now. We're not like in the Mad Men days where it's just so serious. It's great. That's kind of why I love our generation. It's like we can get away with so much more in our messaging and our branding and just kind of have fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, people want to know the people behind the brand. And before, there was always a wall up. You almost, the head of communications would yell at you if you said anything, on social that was, totally off brand. Now, if you say something really off brand, they'll still yell at you. But you're supposed to be out in front a little bit as the leader, and even beyond the CEO, other people. And I think leaning into that, if you really just embrace that, it can be really fun, because you're bringing sort of your own personality into the brand, which I think is awesome. And the examples that you mentioned are just, all those skits and all that stuff, and a lot of them include the founder. Farady's another one it's not as comical, but Faraday does a great job. Their founders are still in all of a lot of their social stuff, and it's just so humanizing, and you get to know, these just twin brothers making this brand, that's a great one, where there's all these examples, and that probably wouldn't have happened, even 10, 20 years ago. Yeah. And so that's kind of fun. And so, when I think about even Haskill Creek and some of these other, the brands that we've started, I think we always, with Classy especially, we would tell the pub crawl story as many times as we could. Even when we got into sort of the big leagues with nonprofits, I remember going to Salvation Army in DC, and it's a more conservative organization, and I'm in there, and I'm like, I start going through this pub crawl story, and I'm like, well, I wonder how this will be received, and I'm trying to win the business. Yeah. And I'm like, and then we were doing this, and they're just looking at me like with wide eyes. But ultimately, we won them over, because they're just like, wow, these guys are authentic. You know what I mean? Like, they're just being them. And it started with them trying to fundraise. Who better to trust than the actual next generation of donors and fundraisers who built the platform, right? Right. And so I tend to think, sure, is probably like 5% risk in being that raw, but 95% upside. And I think that's the same with like the branding stuff and the way that these guys are doing it. And again, those are more like, they're taking a funny angle to it, but you can even take like a serious angle, but still be really vulnerable and really out there and talk about your point of view as a founder, which the brand like kind of can do that, but I think you can complement the brand's point of view with your own point of view, which you can be 10-20% more edgy, which is good. Right. And I think that combo is like very powerful these days.
It's a different form of entertainer, where you can kind of just incorporate acting, comedy, but then there's like, I feel like we're kind of maturing a lot, because we're kind of getting past the influencer with the Bugatti who's just kind of like throwing out these wisdom things that just are just like, okay, that doesn't really mean anything, but it is interesting. Like, you look at people like Andrew Tate, who is like a perfect example of like the opposite end of the worst case scenario for what happens with social media influence, but that you can just kill it at. It's like, so where are we going to go? And I know there's a lot of conversation. It's like, how do we manage these Andrew Tates with, I don't know what the opposite of Andrew Tate would be. Nick McKinley.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. I know when I was starting that, when the word like personal brand, I used to have an allergic reaction to that. Like I was like, personal brand, like all I care about is classy. Like personal brand, like I don't get that. That's for like later when I'm older and like write a book or something. I don't know. But like I think more people more entrepreneurs, more nonprofit leaders seeing, social media and building an audience as a way to propel the business forward, and also share and be a little bit more vulnerable on the mistakes they're making along the way, and like the whole building in public, maybe not to the full degree, but you can still bring people along in the journey with you and do that earlier versus waiting till later. And so what I'm starting to see is, I think, Creator 1.0 was a lot of folks like solo businesses, individual like product people and all that stuff. That's great. Like, and people made Mr. Beast, entertainers, people made phenomenal careers. A subset of them made phenomenal careers. Mr. Beast made $1 billion, right? And then you're starting to see a lot of like the business world move in that direction. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I think there's just going to be a treasure trove of unbelievable content from people just like in the trenches, like living it. You can live it with them and you can learn from them. And then when you might do something, hopefully they give back in the same way. So it's less like waiting till the end after you've been successful or whatever, and really starting to share like your journey while you're doing it, and to help educate, and honestly to learn while you're doing it from other people as well. Like you don't have all the answers. You gotta, we're making more mistakes than we're not most of the time, but just talking about that and open and almost having fun with it, it relieves some pressure, honestly. And I've found just an amazing community of folks that want to just follow along, be supportive, and it's like a support system.
I am more interested in someone's mistakes when I hear like someone who I'm really inspired by. Like, I'm like, what did you do wrong and how did you figure that stuff out? Like, that's actually more interesting to me, if that makes sense.
Totally. A lot of it's trial and error. Yeah. And people just don't document that piece of it. All you see is the end result after like 20 tries.
The one home run, but not all the strikes.
How did they do that? It's impossible. It seems so far away from me. But you're like, actually, I started here with this stupid mistake, and then I learned a little bit more, and then we got this one, and then that's just so iterative. And there's 20 iterations that you don't see, and then there's an article written about them, and they raised $200 million, and they're on the Wall Street Journal, and you're like, man, I'm so small. I'll never get there. Blah blah blah. And that's just it's all that learning. It's like how the sausage was made. It doesn't get shared enough, and I was just talking to someone this morning about how, like, when I was going through my journey, even though I didn't want to build a personal brand, I did make a promise to myself that whenever I had the time and I transitioned out of the CEO role, I would just start sharing the experience as quick as possible while I was still sort of in my prime, and I didn't wait till I forgot everything.
Oh, that's smart.
And I did take notes throughout the 10 years as well, some high moments, some really low moments, so that I could like jog my memory as well. And that's been very useful. So a lot of my content, I'll just sit there and I'll flip through like a book from 5-7 years ago, and it'll be something I wrote and be like, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. And then I'll just like write about it.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the ideas come from there, just from notes from the journey, not even knowing how the hell I would ever, can you say that on YouTube? How the heck I would ever use that later, you know what I mean?
Well, that's just great. That's why I actually really like your social media, your Instagram, because it does offer these like little bite-sized advice and perspectives on everything from like team management, which is really interesting. Like, how do you manage a team? And I feel like, again, going back to this book, Tribes, where it's like, that's kind of like this, how do you manage your friend group for success or your business? It's really kind of important stuff to know. And it's just how you interact with people from your friends group, especially being men. I think being men is kind of hard for us to be vulnerable. But when you learn how to be vulnerable, it's like the most liberating thing in the world.
Like more leaders should be more vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, I don't know how I learned that or when I decided to do that with Classy, but sometimes I was maybe too vulnerable, too open. And then people would be like, why are you sharing all that with the whole company? Not in like a sob story type of way, but just I would share exactly where we were at, all of our numbers all the time.
Right.
I put every single person on, I would send out an update to shareholders quarterly, which a lot of founders don't do, but I would go through this sort of comprehensive process and let them know exactly where they're at. 'Cause, if you're going to give me your money, like I take that very seriously. So I want to keep you updated, but I would CC the entire company on those. So I would treat them just like an owner and a shareholder. And I think that went a long way to build trust and hopefully a lot of the future leaders that are still there. I mean, there are a lot of the folks that started as interns are running departments now. And we just had incredibly low turnover for a long time. And I think treating them like an owner and trusting them early, and just talking to them like you would talk to your board. So you're not dumbing it down for someone. Like, we're all grown-ups here. You decided to join this company as much as we decided to hire you. You have a lot of options. So, I want to bring you in. I want to tell you what, how the sausage is made, right? Like, I want to, it's not a perfect formula. It's not, but if you frame it to them in that way, like, this is going to be up and down and to the right and to the left, but ultimately we all know where we're going. We have a vision and we'll get there. They're going to help you figure it out, and they're going to, like I said, I sit back and let them impress me. Yeah. Rather than, withholding information and then micromanaging, which is the norm. I would overshare and take a step back and let them see what they can do. And a lot of them outlasted me, which is great, right?
That's so interesting. Do you think, because you kind of got into entrepreneurship when you were like, what, 24?
24.
So you kind of got into this world at a young age. Do you kind of feel like you're presenting to what a younger you, what you would have liked the people that were in that position have done to you, if that makes sense?
Yes, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I basically just started leading. Yeah. How I dreamt it up in my head. I mean, it was just like, well, that's how I would treat a friend or a family member. Like, that's how we'll do it. High trust and whatever else. And so that kind of carried through. And that's become more the style in general with folks that have started companies that are, around my age. Which is great. But yeah, certainly not the traditional top-down, more militant style of leadership, which, had been the case for decades before that. But yeah, I think what your comments about the community in that book, there's a lot of similarities to organizational management and design as well. When you talk about being closed off versus, allowing and accepting people that are new and actually seeing them as a positive ingredient. If you think about culture as a soup, the soup tastes a certain way, and then the soup might get bland over time, or you want to spice it up because it's boring. You've had it every night. You add a new ingredient, and you stir it again. You're like, oh, wow, it's something new. Yeah. And that's kind of how I think about culture in general. Like, every person adds a new flavor, a new spice, and you got to keep it, you got to keep yourself entertained or liking the soup over time. And so, I think in general, every new person you hire adds something different. And you have to, in a way, indoctrinate them into the mission, the values, the vision of the company, and let them know the history and the context, but then allow them to make it their own in a way, allow them to propel you forward, not to the, not veering to the left, right? Like, this isn't about them, but help move the ball forward in maybe a different way that you hadn't even thought about.
Right.
So it's almost just like adding this blend of creativity, this new ingredient, and you do that over and over and over, and you end up in places you never thought you'd be.
I feel like that's kind of what Whitefish needs right now. It's kind of exactly that mentality. We kind of need new creative ways of thinking, especially now that we have this SB 382, the Montana Land Use Planning Act, that we're all just grappling with. Have you looked into that at all?
I did a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's challenging to understand everything that's going on there.
Especially because every town in Montana is so different.
Well, that's what, just the headline, right? It's like... the
Montana Land Use Planning Act. Yeah.
My first reaction is it's very top down. Right. And ironically, this is a not top-down government, or supposedly, right? Like,
it's a very red government.
So that's intriguing to me right off the bat. Like, why are we imposing something across small towns that are like 5 to 10,000 in a formula? So regardless of the detail and even the intent, it just seems odd to me, the approach versus a more bottoms-up approach. Have we always got it right here and in other towns and cities? Probably not.
No, definitely
is
not.
Is that the solution to sort of mandate? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Your last guest seemed to know a lot,
Daniel,
but, I think in general, like, proactive planning is good, but I think proactive planning and then low to dissipating community feedback is probably not the right move because the folks and the residents in the community have the most context about what's going on.
Right.
I don't think you want them blocking everything. There's got to be a balance, but I'm not sure you can front load everything in this sort of utopian, planning vision, and then just everything gets green lighted. That seems a little scary to me. At the same time, you don't want everything getting blocked because we do need housing, we do need certain things, right? And so just like with the safe farmland concept, I think it's about balance. And I do really believe in proactive planning at our level. Not sure about the state imposed planning to us, but certainly at our level, more proactive planning around development, around saving agricultural spaces, and just what do we collectively want this place to look like in 50 years, and really like profoundly think about that and plan for it versus sort of this ad hoc reactive thing, which tends to happen, which is a bummer. But I get it. I mean, I get it. You have problems, and people come up with ways they want to solve the problem, and then someone doesn't like it, and then it turns into a thing. And so that's where it's tough. But I think that the more these discussions can come out in the open and the more people can participate in the planning process in some way, the better.
I totally agree. Especially with the idea of building up. I think that is potentially, I'm not one way or the other, but the idea of building more apartment buildings seems to help with preserving more land. That seems like a no-brainer, but there's a lot of people that just don't want to live next to an apartment building in town. So, but we have probably close to 1,000 people that come into Whitefish from other parts of the valley just to work. And that's not really fair either.
Yeah, and you don't want to lose that. So I think what gets lost a lot of times is you have, a portion of the community that gets priced out, and then the community changes because those folks can't participate in our ecosystem here, and that will fundamentally change it for maybe ever. And so not having a solution, I don't think, is the answer. I mean, there has to be a solution, and we can't have this be just, a place for rich people.
Exactly.
And that's something that I feel like most people are on board with. And there's polarizing pieces of this. But in general, I think most people are, regardless of where you sort of lean, stand, whatever, are like, we don't want our workforce to leave.
Right.
So how do we rally around that and do it in a way that makes sense for everyone? And sometimes, all the times there's compromises that need to get made, right? Like the person that doesn't want to see the apartment building. Like I totally get that. Like, would you want an apartment building right next to this beautiful, your spot that you had a beautiful field and mountain view, and now you have an apartment building?
Right.
Probably not as a personal level, right? Like, let's be fair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if there's a plan for the city and people understand that plan, and the plan is to add housing, and there's only so many places that it can go,
right?
That's just what needs to happen. And there's going to be sacrifices somewhere. There has to be.
Yep. And if it blocks your view, we'll just go out. There's a million places you can go and see the view. So I'm going to pick your brain about, let's get some Scot advice. So one of the things I hear not a lot, but people that are starting new businesses, they get intimidated by the idea of using social media for branding. What are 3 pieces of advice you would give someone who's starting a new business, who may have a great product, but is totally unsure and maybe a little intimidated how to navigate marketing and branding, especially in the age of social media, in a way that preserves their desire to be authentic, if that makes sense?
Very much so. So I think that luckily, in today's day and age, customers are wanting the authentic, and they want the founder or the folks that are involved leading the company to get out from behind the curtain and sort of show themselves and say, they want to know, hey, who's running this company? How are they thinking about things? What's their point of view? And a lot of times they'll get behind the company because of those folks stepping out from behind the curtain versus just a random attachment to the brand. There's so much noise out there. There's so many brands. And yes, there are certain ones that speak in a certain language that is like, oh yeah, I kind of like that. But a lot of times it's the combo of the brand and the founder or whoever's leading that sort of having a voice, and you follow both. And that really is marketing in 2023. And social media is the channel. So, a part of me hates social media, and part of me is like, I get it. And I just need to kind of do it because we're trying to create companies and brands and whatnot. But I think and I was off it for a while, but I just swallowed my pride and fucking, sorry.
Yeah.
I said, screw it.
Yeah.
And got back on. But I think for the founder that like feels like they have great product and they're just not sure on like the marketing front, I think part of it is, again, just, taking that leap and saying, okay, you are part of the marketing equation. You're actually first and foremost the marketing equation, in my opinion. And you can be the most effective champion and steward of your brand. So forget like fancy advertising and all these growth hacks and all this stuff. Just get out there and be you. Think about why you started the company in the first place, the space you're in, the industry you're in, and you have a point of view on that because you started the company in the first place. You were, I would assume, trying to solve a problem. So you have a point of view on something. Talk about it.
That's a great point.
Literally.
The story.
Get out there and talk about why you started the company and do more research and get deeper into that point of view and start creating content around it. And that is really, like, at the most basic level, the founder marketing playbook. It isn't about you, and this is where I used to get scared of personal brand. Sure, you can let people into your lives a little bit, but you don't have to. I mean, look at my social media. Do I have my kids all over? No. I chose to stay in my lane with my social media. Some people bring you into their house, and that's cool if they like to do that. Like, I like to have more privacy there, and it's different for everyone. So you figure out where you are on that axis, right? But I do strongly feel like there is a place for you on that axis, no matter what type of founder and personality you have. And like me, it's like a little bit more private on the personal side, but like really heavy vulnerability on the business side, like mistakes, all of it. And I can be opinionated and I can have a little bit of an edge on certain points of view. Some points of view around entrepreneurship, some around the nonprofit space. Some are, so it's the things that I've started, some around health and wellness, right?
Right.
But those are all grounded in personal stories. And it's uniquely Scot, and so your brand should be unique. And the most unique thing is you, because you're the only one living you're living your life and you have your own personal story. So how do you make that more public? How do you share your personal story, and how do you share your point of view that brings people in so that you build an audience of folks that have similar values or agree or resonate or want to learn more? And I think that to me is like the step one. And then you'll layer all the other stuff on, the acquisition strategies and all the stuff for your actual product. But to me, it starts with you and the why. And people really, that's like a magnet. Yeah.
Do you play with AI at all?
I do. I play with ChatGPT for Classy. I still work in or help with M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And so some of the stuff we look at is AI based. So I try to keep myself up so I'm not like this old dinosaur that doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Totally. It is still pretty novel at this point. I actually really enjoy playing around with Midjourney.
Yeah.
Great for branding stuff, like playing around. I want to make a barbecue sauce bottle that has this and this and this. And you can just be like, I want to be Art Deco with Wes Anderson and a little bit of Slayer added into that. And it'll create it. And you're just like, wow.
I mean, it is a great point because content production, AI won't replace the creativity piece.
No.
But you can guide it to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so it doesn't take a massive team to create content for yourself. And if you don't have the resources, you can use a couple different platforms, and all of a sudden you've got great looking content that was AI optimized, not AI written. I think that's, people assume that, and there are people that are doing this, which is shitty, but they'll flame out. They're using ChatGPT to write stuff. And if you think of ChatGPT or any AI as more as an assistant, like a marketing assistant or a research assistant or a design assistant, and you come with the idea, you come with the framework, you even write the first draft, and then you use the tools to fill in the gaps.
Right. So
I think that's really how we use it as well. We use it for our content. Some of the videos, there's little animations and stuff. I don't know if it's Midjourney, but it's it's written. Sometimes when I'm really struggling, I'll have an idea and I'm like, I'll say, ChatGPT, write me an outline for a carousel on LinkedIn that you want to go viral or something, and it'll spit back something. I never use that verbatim, not because I'm like
right.
It just isn't as good. It's not gonna. It's okay. It's like 70% of the way there, right?
Right.
So you have to take that, and what I use it as, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of framing that argument that way. Or weird, I wouldn't have put those 4 steps in there. So then I think of my own personal experience, and a lot of times I rewrite almost the entire thing, but it still got me from a blank page, like writer's block, to something, and then you're on your way.
That's the hardest part, is just getting everything on paper.
Right.
And once you get that on paper, it's just so much easier.
Totally.
Like you said, I've done that too, where it's like, this is all crap, but I can at least start filling in everything. And
right. And the downside, though, I think of ChatGPT and other tools is that, you know, the content that's out there, and this is a pro and a con. The con is that things are starting to look a little bit similar. And you're like, I feel like I've read that before.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it's just ChatGPT spitting out the answer to like, you know, top 10 leadership tips or something. And it's like, yeah, because ChatGPT made that.
Yeah.
And so that's the con. But those folks will be outed pretty soon, and it creates an opportunity for people that actually want to put in the work and use their own creativity, their own experience, and enhance that with AI to really stand out. So I do think that it'll levels the playing field in a little way, in some ways, but also I think it's going to sort of get rid of some of the folks that aren't willing to put in that work, which is probably a good thing. Reduce the noise a little bit.
Totally. Just greatly increases workflow and all sorts of great stuff. I honestly think AI, like, people get scared of it because it's called artificial intelligence. But there's this author who I also really like called Ted Chiang. He's like the sci-fi author, and he was like, it should be really called applied statistics. And I was like, that's kind of a good idea. That's a lot more neutral, but it is fascinating. It's fascinating
and scary at the same time. I mean, at a human level, I think, what did they predict? The singularity is when AI is smarter than humans, and that was supposed to be, I think Ray Kurzweil wrote about that a while back. That was supposed to happen in like, I don't know, 2050 or so, I think, from his
like
prediction.
Something like that.
Something like that, 2050 to maybe 2100. And it's like going to happen within 10 years, most likely.
Right.
So that's right. I mean, that's crazy. Like, when I read that book initially, I was like, I don't know if I'll be alive for that moment, and we will be alive for that moment. So that is crazy to think about, and the implications of that.
Yeah.
What's the scary part is less the AI. It's the humans building the AI.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it can be used for good. It can be used for some pretty crazy, not good stuff.
Right.
And so sort of, I think, creating a unified and global value system around AI is imperative. And, you know, I don't know who leads that. It's probably, you know, maybe Elon Musk, maybe not. I'm just kidding. But
I know, right? I forget the.
But there are a lot of leaders that have sort of like Sam Altman.
Yes, Sam Altman. Yep, fascinating individual.
Totally. Y Combinator before that. Biggest incubator for startups.
Oh.
So back, he was one of the originals in Y Combinator as well.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Huh.
But anyways, so I think, you know, from business leaders to governments to whatever, I think it's imperative that people come together and start to say, like, okay, like, what are the ground rules for this? Almost like there's rules around war and engagement. Not everyone follows those rules, but they're there. What are the rules around AI? And I think that's going to be so important moving forward.
Especially with the economic impact. I think that's really where it needs to focus. You know, whether if you're doing Andrew Wang's universal basic income, which maybe it's more of a universal basic credit, somehow, like, just balancing out that economic impact, that's going to be huge. But then you think about like how AI could be applied to agriculture, where you're taking in the weather systems and just so much data that can be used to really maximize the efficiency of growing seasons.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, the data analysis piece is just unparalleled. So there's no, humans aren't processing data faster than AI today. There's just no chance, unless you're the smartest person in the world, maybe. But the average human is absolutely not competing. So it's for folks that are worried about losing their job to AI eventually, it's more just like, how can you work with AI to make yourself and your role better?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure it's just so binary where it's like a replacement. Sure, there'll be some jobs that are replaced, but that person might be then the prompt engineer of the AI that takes the role. You know, there's new jobs that will be created alongside, maybe even more lucrative jobs than the ones that are lost. And if the people that are thinking about this the right way will study it and study what are the roles of the future with AI playing a central piece.
Right.
And they'll probably make 3 times as much as they're making today.
Right.
So, you know, if they're smart ones, they might end up losing their job, but they might get a much better one.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
So there's ways of thinking about it, ways of studying that you don't have to be. And I think people, it's intimidating too. It's like, oh, do I have to be a rocket scientist to understand what's going on there? Not really.
No.
I mean, you don't have to understand all the intricacies. You just need to sort of think about understand what AI is going to be really good at and what it's not going to be really good at, and where it's going to need human assistance, and then find jobs that are in that bucket of the human assistance piece.
Right. It's going to need curation, human curation. Gosh, we could go on and on about all this. This is great. So many topics to talk about. So wrapping up, we're in the middle of the Crayfish Challenge, lots of nonprofits here. What's the best way for, like, if some local nonprofit wanted to start working with Classy, how would they go about doing that?
Well, there's a lot of great, speaking of content.
Yeah.
Classy was one of the earlier ones. We looked up to HubSpot, if you know that platform as well. Yep. So HubSpot was like probably, they sort of invented the term inbound marketing, which was all about content creation basically early on. And we sort of took a page out of their playbook. And so we have one of the most popular blogs in the space. I think it's the most popular blog. It at one point had more traffic than every single trade publication in the nonprofit space globally combined.
Oh, wow.
That's how popular it is. And it's free resources, education, all that for nonprofits. So I would say check that out first. Like go and if you like what we're talking about, if you like the vibe, and it meshes with your organization, there's plenty of people that will talk to you about the software and walk you through a demo and whatnot. And we have different plans for different size organizations, and it's come a long way. I mean, since the five of us, literally in a garage named after, Ron Burgundy started this company. Like it's a phenomenal full suite platform that really any size organization can, take their fundraising and revenue to the next level, which is great. And I think the number one thing I think I'm most proud of the platform, of the company, is the fact that since day one we've thought about how can we help them build sustainable revenue and not always go back to the well asking for, a donation, which is okay. There's always a place for that, right? But how can you build sustainable revenue? So we were doing this thing called recurring donors, recurring giving, which is basically like a subscription, a micro subscription for nonprofits, or a membership, if you will, early on. And the platform allows you to build an audience, a paid audience essentially, that gives to you monthly. And so
awesome.
Isn't that cool? So now we're in 2023 and that's like a thing everywhere.
Yeah.
But the nonprofits that are most successful build this amazing recurring revenue base of people that give to like $10 every month. And they treat them a little differently. They provide premier content for them. They give them an exclusive experience. They bring them in. They make them like, part of the team. And that's worked amazingly well. And then they're not as dependent. There's not as many swings in their business and whatnot from a revenue perspective. So
that's great.
Yeah. So we're super proud of that. But that's a key feature.
How about Haskill Creek Farms? Any fun fall events coming up?
We are launching a fall series, actually, for the first time. So there'll be everything from, food trucks, bands, bar, all that stuff, to adult movie night. So we're going to be doing like a 30-foot movie screen on the side of the building with like sound and everything, almost like a drive-up movie theater, but you probably won't bring your car. You'll just get a blanket and whatnot. Cool. So we'll just continue to do events throughout fall, maybe take a little break in the winter and then come back for spring. We are opening downtown as well. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So all that construction next to Markus. We don't have a sign up or anything, so I don't think everyone knows that's actually us. But that's about 4,000 square feet there. So we gutted that building, created like what'll be an amazing space, and really to bring the whole alternative to Walgreens vision to life. Like that will actually be like our flagship store. Wow. And the Haskill Creek side, the health and wellness side, is probably 5 times as big. It's huge there. Wow. Yeah, it'll be huge. And we even have some functional space that will rotate in different practitioners, from estheticians to massage to IV to doctor consultations. And so we'll have members of the community actually doing services in there as well. Which is that's amazing. Cool. Yeah. And there'll be a cannabis counter will be part of it, and then the Haskill Creek will be the other part. So, but overall it's about 4,000 square feet. So it's that whole side of the building. So it's a big project. It should be ready and launched probably December, January timeframe.
Great. Yep. That'll be a great addition to town, not just another restaurant or a bar or whatever, And
the exterior needed some love. So you'll start to see it's the, Carrie's leading the design. Again, my wife, Carrie, and she's done an amazing job at the interior, but the exterior was modeled after like the apothecaries in London. So it has this it'll be this dark wood, all this wood trimming and everything around it. Like it's been there for 100 years. It's going to look really cool. Rad.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we can't wait for all this great stuff to happen. So Scott, thank you so much thanks
for having me on.
Yeah, for joining the show. I hope we can have you back, because I feel like there's we just scratched the surface here.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
We'll do a part 2 for sure. Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you.